Evening, family. I am in Ghana. I am speaking on Revelations chapter 12, possibly in a way you've never heard it before, in the context of Canaan, the man, and Canaan, the land, and God's fixation on Canaan. Canaan land, the land of God's promise. I mean, have you ever thought about why it's the land of God's promise and what the promise is? The promise God made to Adam was that we would get back into Eden. You'll find the details, more detailed stories in the book of Adam and Eve. But that's the promise, and the area to fulfill that promise is Canaan land, which is West Coast Africa in the book of Jubilee, when Noah does land assignments. But Canaan has a family issue where his Canaan's dad, Ham, to me, looks inside of Noah's tent. People say it was sexual. I say it was leadership disrespect. Because the seed you sow is the seed you reap. When God puts the curse of Ham on Canaan, God also takes the leadership role from Ham. And Canaan received the leadership role with stipulations. Canaan has to stay within the portals. There's 3 portals. He has to function at all times out of 3 portals. And the portals are on the tabernacle design as the 12-tribe area underneath Shemitic rule, the 7-candlestick area underneath Japheth's rule, and then in the altar area, which is underneath Hamitic rule, but specifically Canaanite rule, that occurs in the end time after Canaan has intermarried with Shemitic Israel in Judges 3:5, Judges 3:5 through 6, and after Canaan, during the slave trade, has also mixed with the seed of Japheth. So Canaan is actually, by the end time and by the time he's ready to go into the 3rd portal, Canaan is actually Adamic, like Adam. You know, if he searches hard enough, especially the ones living in America, the Africans living in America, they'll find out that they have some European grandfathers. And I'm not going to go into details about how that happened. But they definitely have some European grandfathers if they look hard enough. They cannot claim to be anything but Adamic because during the early history of the United States of America, there was no such thing as an African woman who wasn't tampered with. Read between the lines. There was no such thing. From the time they were little kids, the females and the males, thoroughly tampered with. So, African American needs to understand you are Adamic like Christ. That's the good part. Christ is Adamic. Adam is Adamic. The beginning is the ending. God is not looking for people who are affected by the Tower of Babel. The Tower of Babel event which divided us into our tribes, into our tongues. And whenever God tries to use a tribe thoroughly affected by the Tower of Babel, people separating, DNAs collecting in different corners of the earth, and little cultures developing. And then when God uses that tribe to try to bring everybody together, it doesn't work. The tribe goes off into tribe against tribalism. Lucifer's able to contaminate the tribe's spirit. And when you look at Bibles, the stories written in the Bible, you see that Peter was having that issue. And it wasn't just Peter. Peter didn't want the Gentiles coming into the religion that he thought belonged to the Shemitic lineage, which is so funny because the Shemites married the Hamites in Judges 3:5-6. Like all of them, the males married all of the Canaanites. The Shemitic males married all of the Canaanite women, the African women. The Shemitic females married all of the African men. But Israel would only identify with their Shemitic side. In Ezekiel chapter 16, God says that's blasphemy. In Ezekiel chapter 16, you see God warning what he wants to be Adamic Israel, because in the future this tribe is going to be carried away from Africa on boats, and they're going to become Adamic because of that event. But he warns them in Ezekiel chapter 16. He says, thy mother and thy father is an Amorite and a Hittite. That's African. And the abomination is they're mixed, but they don't want to talk about the mixture, the Hamitic side. I'm convinced that it is because they don't understand the curse of Canaan. And the reason why I'm convinced about that, and that there's a self-hate going on with Israel at this time, because they are mixed with African blood. And the reason why I believe there's a self-hate going on, there's an abomination going on, is because God has to teach them about who they are. And he even has to teach them about their Hamitic history. These people have begun to cover up their own black history. And God says, that's an abomination. What are you doing? So God says, yeah, your mother and your father, Amorite and Hittite, and nobody wanted to help them, your mother and your father. He goes into how nobody even wanted to wash them when they were born. Can you imagine a baby being born, blood all over the baby, and nobody cares enough to go up to him and try to wash the baby? God said, yeah, that type of thing, that self-hate was going on. The Canaanite women were really doing that. And it all comes down to the curse of Canaan, not understanding it. So God had to teach them. God said, look, I walked up to Canaan in the wilderness, and I put a double portion blessing on him. I said, live, yea, live. The first live removes the curse. The second live elevates him. And the reason why I did it is because Canaan is not a cursed person. He's a curse bearer. Matter of fact, he loved his dad and his brothers, Cush, Mizraim, which is Egypt, Cush, which is the East Coast African, and Phut, which I believe are the term escapes me. The Nubians. Okay. Canaan loved his brothers and his family so much that he took the curse of Ham so that they wouldn't suffer. And the thing that, if you read the book of Deuteronomy chapter 28, the curse is being carried away. Curse going out and curse coming in, just constantly feeling the burden. That is the thing Canaan took on himself so his brothers wouldn't have to deal with it. And that is the thing, the removal from Africa and the losing of your traditions. Canaan made a sacrifice so that the natives of Africa would not lose their traditions, and he made a covenant with God that his people would have to stay in the portal in order for those curses not to affect them. But in the portal, if you read Ezekiel chapter 16, they started having sex with everybody. They didn't have a problem with you coming in and joining them, but they were just too sexual. And God couldn't use them, so he replaced them. But I'm here in Africa. I'm looking for the portal. I believe I found it. We're going to talk about it. And this is going to be part 1. And we'll get into some details in just a few minutes. Enjoying myself here in Ghana.